We serve over 670 members across our 4-state district, and our programs are accessible only through our members. So we are a member-owned organization, and everything drives through our members. We were established by Congress in 1932, so we are running up on that 100-year birthday here in a little bit. And we were designed to support housing and community development. You may not know this, but it was also a problem back in 1932, and so we were created to help support that. We provide the needed liquidity and funding to our members, which are your local financial institutions, right? Those are your banks, credit unions, insurance companies, CDFIs that are in your area. We are considered a cooperative and are member-owned. We're also considered a government-sponsored enterprise, or GSE. Similar to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, those are also government-sponsored enterprises. In 1989, our mission was updated by Congress to include housing. During that time, our regulation was updated and it required us to take 10% of our income and funnel it back into our district through affordable housing initiatives. So the funding we offer is not federal dollars, but these are our own profits that we give back to the communities that we serve. Because we have federal in our name, we're often confused with federal funds, and that is not what we do here. There are 11 different federal home loan banks throughout the United States. We all have different regions or districts to bring focus on the needs of those individual communities. Our district is the 10th district, and we are comprised of, again, Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, and Oklahoma. Our programs, again, are only accessible through our members. This is a map of all the 11 FHLBank districts across the U.S. You can see that they are geographically spaced to serve the communities best. Des Moines has the largest footprint with 16 states and territories. They've got, the Hawaii, Guam, the U.S. territories out there. And then we also have smaller territories. So like Chicago and Indianapolis, they only serve 2 states in the United States. Housing and Community Development is the department that I am lucky enough to lead. In HCD, we get to provide funding to support our district. I've been calling us the reward or the heart part of the bank because we then turn our profits and our income back into funding that we provide to the communities that need it most. It actually allows us the opportunity here at the bank to build communities with our members and ultimately change lives. We do this through programs designed to support our members and their communities, which we're just going to go over very briefly. But by regulation, I mentioned this earlier, we take 10% of our income and we funnel that back into our district through affordable housing initiatives. We're able to do that through a few programs that we administer. So what does that 10% look like? This is our regulatory program funding, and you can see here in our regulatory programs that we have 2 of them. Our AHP is our affordable housing program, and we have almost over $29 million to support AHP projects in 2026. And then our HSP, short for Homeownership Set-Aside Program, you can see why we shorten that. We have nearly $16 million for HSP in 2026. So again, that's our 10% regulatory funding. Beyond that, we also voluntarily contribute an additional 5% for 15% total that we're putting back into our district. The 5% funding is split amongst various programs designed to meet needs across the district. You can see the various programs and dollar amounts listed here, and of course, NAHI is what we're going to focus on today. I want to make sure at a super high level that you're at least aware of the other programs that we have and what we do. So starting with our regulatory programs, our affordable housing program, or AHP for short, is our competitive grant program. When we combine AHP with the 11 other federal home loan, all 11 federal home loan banks, 10 others besides us, it is the largest privately funded housing grant program in the nation. FHLBank members, in partnership with public and private housing organizations, apply for grant funds and can receive up to $1.5 million for housing projects. Turnkey is our down payment and closing cost assistance programs. That's the umbrella name for all of our programs to support home buyers in our district. That suite of programs, we have the Homeownership Set-Aside Program, which we just talked about, Homeownership Set-Aside Program Plus, and we also have Homeownership Possibilities Expanded, or HOPE for short. HOPE lives under the Turnkey umbrella because it's a down payment assistance program, but it is actually funded with voluntary dollars. HOPE provides down payment assistance for middle income households, those that don't traditionally receive support but are in need of subsidy to make homeownership accessible and affordable. Our community advance products, or CAP for short, include our discounted advance programs that promote and encourage community lending for our members. Both the Community Housing Program and Community Development Program provide advances to our members priced below our regular rate advances. Okay, over the past few years, we talked about the voluntary contributions that we make, 5% above our 10% required contribution. And so we've expanded our programs over the last few years to provide additional resource to support the communities that we serve. So through those voluntary contributions, we offer support in unique ways to address very specific needs in our district. The first that I'll go over here is CARE, our Community Assistance Recovery effort. This provides assistance to members in the form of actually a matching grant to amplify their support that they provide to their communities in the event of a disaster. So this is a disaster relief program, and as you all know, in the states that we live in, we are not short on disasters. The most recent ones that we've had have been wildfires in both Nebraska and in Oklahoma. And we often get asked by our members how we can help support those issues. And so CARE allows us the opportunity to provide additional funding in those communities when they're in the most need. Our mortgage rate reduction product is available through our MPF program and makes homeownership more accessible by permanently reducing the mortgage interest rate to help lower that monthly mortgage payment and overall interest that borrower will pay over the life of the loan. LEAP, or our Lending Enhancement Advance Program, is a discounted rate advance that allows members to borrow at below regular advance rates and targets specific types of lending in those communities. And then additionally, we have, of course, what we're going to go over today, our Native American Housing Initiative Grants Program, and that provides funding and support to tribal communities. And finally, our partnership with MSU Denver for the FHLBank Topeka Affordable Housing Institute. The Institute was created to provide educational resources and support the development of a workforce that will work in the affordable housing space to better tackle some of the challenges that we all know exist with affordable housing. We're very excited to see the response that we've gotten from our new voluntary programs, and we look forward to seeing them grow. Okay, this is our product matrix. So every year we produce a product matrix that really just defines and shows what programs we have available for 2026. These are all of our programs that we have, the dates of availability, the funds that are connected to each of those programs. There is a QR code there in the bottom that you can scan that will take you to our website and provide you with more information. I don't know about you, but that print is really small on my side, so you do not have to scroll in or take a screenshot. I believe, and Jesse, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that there is an attachment, or we will send this out to you so that you have our program matrix.
Yes, if you all can see our resources button and the ribbon at the bottom or top of your screen. So everybody's a little different. And there is a document in there that's this HCD programs matrix that you can all download.
Excellent. So you'll have the matrix. Okay. Moving on, really what you're all here for, right, is spending the rest of our time focused on NAHI and sharing more about that program and the usage of that program. The Native American Housing Initiatives Grants Program, or NAHI for short, is a voluntary grant program that provides access to grant funds intended to build communities in support of housing for Native Americans in Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, and Oklahoma. NAHI supports tribal organizations working at the grassroots level who we know are in the best position to identify tribal needs. 2023 was our first year, and with the success of the program, we're so happy to continue to partner with our members and the tribal communities in our district to offer support. What started as an initial $1 million commitment in 2023 has grown to $13.3 million that we've provided overall for NAHI since program inception. And this year we've allocated $4 million to NAHI. Funds are accessed in partnership with our members and are focused on housing initiatives in our district. Why NAHI? This is probably the biggest question that we were asked when the program first started. You know, why are we focused on this area? Why are we putting so much funding into this area? And the first answer that I've always given is it's the right time. For over 35 years, Native American projects have not received adequate funding through our other programs. And also during our FHLBank System at 100 listening tour a few years ago, I think that was in 2022, the roundtable that was actually held in our district really focused on the challenges experienced for Native Americans and their communities. And it's the right thing. In our district, we have the highest percentage of the Native American population per capita, which is 3% in our district when compared to other districts. Not to be confused with the highest population count that is owned by Des Moines. They have, you know, those territorial islands and they have a lot of territory to cover there. And we also have a significant number of tribes in our district. We have nearly 50, we have 48, including the largest tribe in the nation, which is Cherokee Nation. Some FHL banks don't have any tribes in their district. That doesn't mean they don't have Native people, of course. They just don't have any tribes that are like housed there or like set up there. There is a tremendous need for support, of course, in the Native American community. And so where did it start? And I always tell people it's important to listen. So at first we listened. Every quarter we meet with our Affordable Housing Advisory Council, or AHAC for short, to discuss housing and economic development needs and challenges that are faced in our district. Native American communities and the struggles faced continue to be a topic of discussion. We have representation of Native American voices on both our AHAC and our board. There were also, as I mentioned, a couple of roundtable sessions for the FHL Bank System at 100 roundtables that focus on support for Native American communities. And so here are a few of the many things that were shared at the roundtable. There's just a few sound bites that I pulled out and themes that we recognized. So one, regulatory burden negates the benefits of a program. Don't make it complex. There are already programs and plans in place that need funding, and there's no need to make this harder than it needs to be. Native communities know what the needs are. They need the funding without us telling them how to use it. Preferably, that funding comes in larger amounts. That was a theme. A lot of the feedback that we heard, some of the other programs designed to support Native communities are in much smaller increments. And so we definitely kept that in mind as we were designing the program. Provide funding to specifically support Native Americans. It's often difficult in larger spaces for them to compete for the same dollars. And finally, to listen. This was and is, of course, the biggest takeaway for us. Listen to what's being said, try to respond, and address things accordingly. And so we responded. We created NAHI for the sole purpose of providing funding to Native American tribes and tribally designated housing entities, because we know they are in the best position to address housing challenges faced in their communities. We designed the program with the feedback that we heard. Low barrier, we didn't want to put a lot of restrictions or requirements on the program. We wanted the uses to be flexible, to give the recipients the ability to do what they do best. We also want to be very sensitive to the unique needs of the Native American communities that we serve and provide funding in larger amounts as requested. We absolutely want to remove complexity. We didn't need an application with 50 different questions and a scoring rubric. We already have one of those. We wanted to make it as simple as possible. And finally, we wanted the program to be a partnership. We want this to be a partnership with us, with our members, because we know that's really the only way that we're going to make real change in the communities that we serve. So, NAHI, more about NAHI. The grants are intended to strengthen and support housing for Native Americans in our district. Eligible recipients will partner with members to access the funds. I keep saying that, but members really are the lifeblood of what we do here. And so without a member, there's no way to really access the funds. There has to be a partnership with members. Grants will be deployed in larger increments with a minimum of $100,000 and a maximum of $500,000. The size of the grant does depend on alignment with the purpose of the program, and we'll get into that a little bit later. We will request impact reporting to determine the outcomes of the funds provided and make sure that it aligns with, what you said you were going to do. So, eligible recipients are federally recognized tribes and tribally designated housing entities. To be eligible, the tribes or TDHEs must provide housing services to those residing in our district. So you must address housing in one of the 4 states in our district. This is probably a question that we get all the time. What can these funds be used for? You can see there's a very long list here on the screen. This isn't an exhaustive list, but some ideas of how the funds can be used. The funds should be connected in some way to housing for Native Americans in our district. Beyond traditional uses like down payment assistance, repairs, rental assistance, rehabilitation, new construction, those are sort of traditional uses of housing funds. We want to hear what the needs are. Are there different or unique needs in your area? What we heard when we listened was that there are needs that don't traditionally receive funding. And so we are very open to supporting those types of initiatives. It's probably easier to list what the funds can't be used for, which you can see is a very short list. It says include but are not limited to. These are the ones that we could actually think of and put pen to paper. Of course, you can't use the funds for nefarious activity. You can't use it for illegal issues or things like that. But again, it has to be tied to housing in some ways, or anything non-housing does not work for the program. It can't be used for litigation. We're not going to get involved in those types of things, and it can't be used for lobbying. So those are things that we actually could write down. If you're utilizing the funds in an appropriate way that is legal and connected to housing, you're going to be fine. As stated in the box on the screen, which I should have pulled up, there it is. The grant funds are expected to impact the provision of housing by strengthening the recipient's financial position, operational efficiency, and/or human capital. The funds are to really further housing opportunities offered to Native Americans in our district. It's as simple as that. Before we get to the application process, here are some important dates. The application period will open on June 1st. It closes on July 10th this year. Member certifications are the next step, and they need to be submitted following the application. Members have 2 weeks to submit their certification. Once the application period closes, we will evaluate all applications with awards and notify by October 31st. If awarded, Agreements will be drafted for signing. Don't worry, it's a one-page agreement, fairly simple. After the agreement is signed, funds will be dispersed. We put in some expectations for agreements and disbursement timelines this year. This was new to us last year. It's something that we're trying to implement as our program continued to mature, right? We just started this in 2023, but as they mature, we find out things every year to improve. And we have not previously set deadlines to the agreement or disbursement process, but we recognize that the funds should be awarded to those who need it most. And if you're unable to use the funds, we should award another project that can make an impact in their community by using these funds. Additionally, it's important to keep the awarded funds separate, calendar year to calendar year. If awarded in 2026, our expectations is that the agreement is signed by January 30th, 2027. Funds are dispersed by April 30th, 2027. And if we need to complete this in one step or two steps or however that needs to happen, we're willing to accommodate the approval structure. We just need to communicate and talk about it. The challenge that we've had with timing of the funding is that every tribal government and approval process is different. We understand that. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. We're really attempting to be accommodative. But what we don't want is for an award to go unused. We don't want that. If we're in the beginning stages of the next award cycle and someone from last year hasn't signed their agreement or dispersed their funds, we will consider that for the next round and may require them to forfeit the funds. If completing the agreement and disbursement within the timelines identified above is not something that will be a challenge to you, please reach out and discuss that to us. If this isn't a timeline that works for you, it might not be the right time to apply. We just need to talk about it and understand what your unique complexities are and what unique circumstances you have, and if this program is right for you. And then finally, impact reporting. Reporting is requested 1 year out. This is another area where we continue to evolve our program. When you create a program from scratch, you really have no idea what you're going to learn that first year or two. One thing we've learned is that we need to be a bit more informative of what is expected for impact reporting. And I'm going to go over that in a little bit more detail later. But we want to give you the full program timeline so that you can put these dates on your calendar. You can start socializing them with people in your community that may need to know, like your tribal councils, attorneys, folks who have to approve things, just so you're prepared for any timing challenges and can communicate those either upfront or right after award. So, how do you apply for NAHI? The first half of the process is application submission, member certification, and application evaluation. Application submitted, complete and submit an application in partnership with the member. So first you need to identify your member, identify who's going to support your application. Member, if you're the member on the call, you need to identify who you're working with as far as an eligible recipient, and then identify and ensure that it is an eligible use of funds. We expect in the application to see how the funds will further housing solutions. What are the housing needs in your community? How will funds from NAHI address those needs? We want you to provide us with specific outcomes of how you anticipate using the funds and what the impacts to your community will be. The application period, again, opens on June 1st with the application available on our website. It is mobile friendly, and a paper application, if you would prefer it, can be provided upon request. In the 4 years that we've done this, 3 years we've done this, no one has requested a paper application. We'd be happy to provide one if you need one. The deadline for submission is 5 p.m. Central Time on July 10th. And I say Central Time because we do have 2 time zones in our district, and so we have to clarify that it is Central Time. As noted, this is in partnership with our members, so a member certification will be required. Following the application submission, a member will receive a notification to certify the application. We'll go over that in just a moment. One thing to make clear, though, for those Native communities on our call, that the person certifying the application, the person that you're identifying as your contact, needs to be authorized to sign off on that application. And so that means that they must have authority as an HCD user or an advances user. Of course, that doesn't really mean a lot if you're not a member, but you want to ensure that they have the right authorization in order to participate. If clarification is needed on who that is, just reach out to us, just call us, and we can figure out who the best user is for you to identify. Each section of the application must be completed. Incomplete applications will not be considered for award. Of course, signatures are required. Those can be electronic and are submitted electronically. Supporting documentation, we always get a lot of questions about supporting documentation. There is a required submission of proof of being an eligible recipient. So you have to provide us with information, and it's identified on the application of what qualifies as proof of being an eligible recipient. So you must document that you're a federally recognized tribe or a tribally designated housing entity. Also, if you submit any additional information you'd like us to consider during the application period, this can be related to the project or the needs in your community, anything else you'd like us to know. Some people submit plans, some people have submitted needs assessments. It's really up to you how you would like us to receive that information. We're not putting any requirements on it. Part of the simplicity of the program, again, we listened, right, and we wanted it to be simple, was to design it in a narrative format. We ask very open-ended questions. We want to hear your unique story and understand what your unique needs are. I'll walk you through sections of the application, starting with, of course, basic instructions that we have here. I don't need to read this to you, but if you, for whatever reason, don't understand any of this information, please reach out during the application period. We are happy to help you and support you in any way. Of course, applicant information, main point of contact, email, addresses. Again, I don't need to read this all to you. You're all very familiar with this information. Member information. Remember, the contact person must be an authorized user. If you don't know who that is, reach out to us and we will help you identify who that is. FHLBank customer ID, for example, only your member is going to know that. And it's possible the person you're working with at the member doesn't know that number. Call us, we'll get it for you. Okay, now getting into kind of the guts of the application. The first is, of course, the amount requested. Between $100,000 and $500,000 is the maximum. Minimum amount is $100,000. How will the funds be used? You can check all that apply. You might be doing multiple things with the funding or requesting multiple things. Check all that apply for your particular application. And then the narrative. Again, we want to hear your story. What is your mission, history? What's the current state of housing for your community? Tell us about current programs that you have, how those are funded, anticipated changes with future funding. We all know that's, kind of up in the air right now. So if you are anticipating changes in funding, let us know that. We want to know what housing needs are you able and not able to address due to a lack of funding or adequate funding or resources. How will you use NAHI grant funds if awarded? Provide as much detail as possible so that we have a clear understanding of what you plan to do if receiving an award. What is the geographic footprint and or counties or areas that will benefit from your proposed use of funds? That can be very, very small, right? We're not saying one is good or bad. It just is. It's not good or bad. But we want to understand. What is the outcome or impact expected? How are you going to measure success of what you're proposing? If you receive the NAHI award, when do you anticipate beginning the project, and include any other timelines, estimations, of course, for completing your program? We don't ask this to create more compliance deadlines. We're not saying, oh, you said it was February 1st and it's February 2nd and you're not done. Like that's not what we're intending to do there. This information allows us to understand where you're at in the process and how to work with you in the future. The last question that we have here is, would you accept grant funds less than the requested amount? And if so, how would that impact the proposed use of funds and outcomes? Sometimes on occasion, we can grant some funds, but not all. We ask this question to ensure if you receive less than the requested amount, that your project continues to be viable. Again, providing documentation in one of the forms that's identified there to ensure confirmation of being a federally recognized tribe or a tribally designated housing entity, and then of course provide any other documentation that you would like for us to review during your application. Certification, you're going to check the boxes, of course, to ensure that you meet program requirements. Please only check them if you can answer them affirmatively. And then sign and date. There's a submit button right below this section on the actual form. I just couldn't fit it onto the screen. So once you've completed all of that, then you are allowed to submit. So once the application is submitted, of course, again, it goes to the member certification, and we do this in partnership with the members, so they're a vital part of the process. During the member certification, the member provides support for the application. The person completing the certification must have authority to make certifications on behalf of the member. So again, they must be an HCD user or an advances user authorization. The lights just went out in my room. Again, the technical difficulties continue for me today. The member is also certifying that it will, that threw me off. The member is also certifying that the information is true and correct and the applicant meets the eligibility requirements. And of course, you're doing that to the best of your ability. We can't ask you to certify something that you don't know, but to the best of your ability, do you know this information to be true and correct? The member is also certifying that it will assist the recipient with the disbursement. Oh, lights are back on. Look at that. Yay. Lights are back on. The member is also certifying that it will assist the recipient with the disbursement and impact reporting process if awarded. So the disbursement is very important for the member to be involved because the funds flow through the member. So they, of course, need to certify that they will help support you through that process. This is a partnership, and members should partner with recipients to apply and to be actively involved in that process. Yay, I'm glad you guys can see my face again. Sorry about that. So, as members provide support for the application, they will complete the member certification and work with the recipient and FHLBank to coordinate the agreement, disbursement, and impact reporting processes. The member certification is pretty simple, certifying that the information is true and correct to the best of your knowledge and that the application actually meets the eligibility requirements. Again, you'll want to make sure the person certifying for the member is authorized. Before I start on application evaluation, I'm going to take a pause, I'm going to take a drink. Are there any questions currently out there that I can answer? Jesse or Rachel, are there any questions currently?
Not currently, but please feel free to put them in the Q&A or in the chat, and we will make sure that they are read aloud.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so following the application and member certification process, we will evaluate, FHLBank will evaluate all applications submitted to determine award. Incomplete applications, again, will not be reviewed. Applications without member certifications will also not be reviewed. We may reach out to the member and/or applicant if additional information or clarification is needed. If there's just something we don't understand, something that didn't make sense to us, or something that is confusing, or something that we'd like more information on, we may reach out to gather more information. We're going to evaluate applications starting in August, so right after the process ends with the application and certification process, and we will complete that review and make announcements by October 31st. Okay, so to the parts that everyone wants to know, how do I get awarded, right? Like, what are you looking at? What do you want me to write? What do you want me to say? What do I need to do so I can get awarded? Of course, there are several items that we will consider to evaluate the application. A few are listed here, but this, of course, is not an exhaustive list. This is just part of it. What are the current housing needs? Are there other resources available? Again, that's not good or bad. It just is. It's an answer that we would like to know. What are the expected outcomes if awarded? Ultimately, we want to make the greatest impact with the funds we provide. And that also means ensuring the funds are able to meet the objectives and that the plan can work. NAHI is a competitive program. It's not not all applications are awarded. So it is competitive, but there isn't an emphasis on one type of application over another. You can see that in the previous awards. I liken it more to like a scholarship. Everyone can apply for the scholarship, but not everyone will be awarded. It's going to be determined on telling us where you've been, where you're going, how NAHI funds are going to help you get there. We actually create an advisory group, a NAHI advisory group that is made up of business partners. That's what we call our employees. So it's made up of our business partners to evaluate the application. So this is a variety of folks from a lot of variety of backgrounds, different areas around the bank who get to participate in the advisory group to read the applications and determine which ones we should award with the amount of funds that we have available. Here are some additional considerations we may include when evaluating applications. This isn't an exhaustive list, but something we wanted to share that may help you write your narrative in the application. Again, there's not on any of these a right or wrong answer. We just want to understand and know the information so that we can, when we're evaluating, look at all of the applications through the same lens. This is the actual form that we use. I'm letting you kind of peek behind the curtain here. This is the actual form that we use with our NAHI advisory group. As they review the applications, we ask them to rate each one and then come together as a group to discuss. Again, the more information and details provided may be helpful during the evaluation process, meaning they may be able to answer some of these questions easier if additional detail is provided. That doesn't mean it's, again, right or wrong. It's just helpful sometimes for people to answer these questions. Additional questions and information used during the evaluation period here. For each application, we consider the application as a whole, and then we also compare it to others. So again, it's more like a scholarship. You're sort of up against the other pool of applicants that have also applied.
Kylie, we have a question.
Oh, good. I love questions. These are my favorite part.
So the question is, if a member has a tribal customer that is outside of the Topeka district, is that entity eligible for NAHI, e.g. a tribal housing entity in Montana?
So it does need to be a tribal entity providing services to, I don't think we've ever had that question before, and I'd have to go back and look. Maybe Amy or Jennifer, if you're on. Amy, I see you on. I'm not sure if our policy, I would need to read our policy specifically, if the tribal entity can be outside of our district but provide services to those inside our district. I would need to look at that policy. So if you don't mind in the chat putting down like maybe your email or something, we will follow up with you directly. But that's a great question. And obviously I couldn't even answer it right off the top of my head. And this thing is really loud. I hope you guys can still hear me. Okay, moving on. Thank you for your question. As noted previously, we evaluate each application and the amount requested. Given that we have limited funds available, the advisory group determines the appropriate allocation of funding for awarded projects. Sometimes that means projects are awarded less than the requested amount. We ask specific questions on reduced funding to understand the implications of reducing the award and the impact of the overall project. Okay. Post-application process will include the award notification, disbursement, and impact reporting. So award notification, FHLBank will notify all applicants of award decision by October 31st. All award recipients will be posted on our website. As noted before, the amount of award will depend on the strength of the application, funds available, how it competes with other applications, and the amount provided may or may not be the full amount requested. If you've received a previous award, you are eligible to receive funding again. However, a previous award is not a promise or guarantee that funding will be awarded each year. Okay, once awards are announced, an agreement, which we talked a little bit about earlier, an agreement will be signed by the member and recipient. And that needs to be signed by January 30th of the following year, so 2027 for this year's round. After a fully executed agreement is received, the disbursement request form will be processed and provided with funds dispersed by April 30th of 2027. Again, if we need to streamline those events to work with your specific organizational structure, we're open to that. We just need to have communication with you on what that looks like. Sometimes if you have to run it through tribal government, but they only meet quarterly, and so if you do the application one quarter and then you don't have time to get the disbursement form, we understand all of that. Just communicate with us and we'll work with you. Funds will flow through the member's DDA account, with the member providing the funds to the recipient. So once the disbursement form is provided to us, we will issue those funds to the member. The member will issue them to the recipient. We do not require matching funds. We do not require you, this is not reimbursement process, so we don't require you to expense the funds and then get reimbursed. We want to get the hands into the communities that need them so that you can start using them immediately. And so we don't have any of those, again, back to we listened, we don't have any of those restrictions or requirements. We want to get the funds to you. So the sooner that agreement and that disbursement is complete, then we can submit the funds to you and you can have them in your possession to begin doing the work. The full award amount will be dispersed at once. Again, this isn't on reimbursement and it's not incremental. If you were awarded $250,000, once those forms are signed, each of them, the agreement and the disbursement form, $250 will be sent to you. Not $250, $250,000 will be sent to you. The recipient will agree that the funds provided will be used towards the needs from the application. So that is the one stipulation that we have, of course, is that if you signed the agreement that said you were using it for XYZ, our expectation is that you actually use it for XYZ. We also would love to celebrate with you. If you want to do either member or recipient or both, please both. If you want to do a big check presentation, if you want to have a celebratory lunch, if you want to, we've done ribbon cuttings, we've done groundbreakings, all of those things, we would love to celebrate with you and the progress that you're making in your community. Okay, impact reporting. Impact reporting is typically about a year out after disbursement. The impact reporting form will be completed with participation from both the recipient and the member. If funds have not been exhausted, and sometimes they're not, most times they're not, we'll say, right? Most times funds take over a year to complete the project, and that's okay. But when you complete your first impact report, you can explain where you're at in your progress, what your timeline is, what you're anticipating completion. Following that, we're going to ask for periodic progress updates and a final impact report. And Jennifer, who you'll see her picture here in a couple minutes, Jennifer really coordinates all of our impact reporting. And so she's going to work with each of you individually to figure out, what your uniques are, how her support of you needs to be individualized to what you're doing, what works for XYZ recipient doesn't always work for ABC recipient, right? And so we try to tailor our response and how we work with you based on what your needs are and what your community, how you operate. But we also want to hear feedback on the program, the impact the funds made, and also improvements to the process. What went well, what should change, how can we help? If there's something, again, we just created this program, and when you're starting from scratch, we are very open to feedback. If there's something where we're falling short, tell us that so that we understand and we can make modifications year over year. Obviously, we just want to make sure that the funds are utilized and meet the uses provided at application. That was why you were awarded, and so we want to make sure that those funds continue to get into the communities that need them. That doesn't mean that changes aren't allowed. Let's be very clear about that. Best laid plans, right? Changes to scope are okay within reason. We just need to be aware and determine if a modification form is necessary, what steps to take, what additional information we need. It's happened before. I'm certain that it will happen again. Even the best laid plans sometimes change. And so we've had several changes to scope where, the previous proposal was to start with modular homes and it moved to 3D printed homes. Great. We had where someone was going to create a homeless shelter with a structure and just sort of redo the structure. Well, by the time they got the funds, that structure had been sold already, and so they had to kind of start from scratch. They ended up doing new construction versus rehabilitation of a place. Again, great. We will work through those types of changes with you. We just need to know that something's changed, and if we don't know, we can't react appropriately. In 2025, we received 29 applications totaling almost $14 million. Ultimately, we awarded 16 applications for $5 million. One was in Colorado, 2 in Kansas, 1 in Nebraska, and 12 in Oklahoma. That makes sense, right? Because the majority of the 48 tribes that I mentioned earlier are in Oklahoma. So it makes sense that a lot of the tribes that are getting awarded, a lot of the recipients receiving award are located in Oklahoma. The funding that was dispersed in 2025 will provide a variety of support beyond traditional uses of funds like down payment and home repair assistance. NAHI will also provide funding for tiny homes for tribal veterans, 3D printed homes, increasing housing supply, so new homes, new construction, storm shelters, and even rehabilitating a community building that's used for cultural activities and gatherings for the neighborhood tenants. So again, housing adjacent, not necessarily directly housing, but has to do with housing and the way that the community needs that support. All of the awardees are listed on the screen. You can also go to our website and it will give you more information for each of those awards if you have interest in seeing additional info. Okay, communication efforts. Outreach and connection are the most critical role in the success of NAHI. That's why we do this webinar every year. That's why we continue to build relationships with the folks who are doing the work. We want to be your trusted partner. In 2023, when we introduced the program, we introduced it through a webinar. We also had a podcast. We continue communication efforts about the program through marketing and other outreach. We attend events, provide technical assistance. Most importantly, again, building relationships with both our members and potential recipients is the most important focus of our efforts going forward. We're continuing to listen and learn how we can shape our program and provide support. And that's critical to the long-term benefits of this program and its success. Here's our team, our amazing team who work so hard to make sure that I'm not just sitting here talking about stuff, but they're actually helping get that stuff done. So names you may be familiar with if you've been awarded before, but Amy Meek oversees the NAHI program with me, is supported by Jennifer Bonenkemper and Rachel Plant. Jennifer does, as I mentioned, most of the impact reporting, and Rachel provides support for internal processing of applications and documentation. If you need any of any of them, or we can provide any support that you need. So you hopefully have our contact information. This is the team. You at least have a face that you can put with the names, and we are happy to support you in any way that you need as you think about applying, as you're applying, after application, certainly during that agreement and disbursement and impact reporting process after award. Okay, a few links for all of you. The first is just to our main website. The second is to our landing page for NAHI. And the third is the announcement of our 2025 awardees and recipients. And it does give a little more detail for each of those awards and what they're being used for. Okay, with that, we're going to open it up for questions. What do you got? Anything? I couldn't have said everything right. Jesse, are there any questions?
There are no questions, Kylie.
No questions. Okay. Well, hopefully we got the email address of the person who asked earlier, and we will follow up with you and get you an answer.
Yes, we did. Amy was able to answer the question, but we're still have their email address, and we'll be following up.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Sorry that I didn't have that off the top of my head. It was a really good question. You stumped me. But thank you. Thank you all for joining us.
Oh, hold on.
Hold on. Oh, we have a question. Yay. I love it.
I am trying to get my bank signed up to apply for this. Is it too late to connect?
No, it's not too late. It's not too late until July 10th. July 10th is the last day for application, so it is not too late. If you want to reach out to me, my email's here on the screen. You can reach out to anyone on the team. We'll send you this slide deck so that you have the information, you have the team's contact information. We are happy to connect with you and your member and try to, of course, if they have questions about applying, we will help address any of those that we can.
Hi, Kylie. We have one other question.
I love it. Yay.
It says, can Tribe or TDHE charge IDC on awarded funds?
I don't know what that is.
Indirect costs, I think. I think that means indirect costs, but maybe they could clarify.
I think if you're going to charge some type of fee, which is fine, again, that's not an ineligible use. If there's some type of fee, you would just want to disclose that in the application so that we all understand that a portion of the funds would go to that, if that is what IDC means. And again, there's so many acronyms, we've got them too, right? If that's not the right use of that, let us know.
It is indirect cost.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, yay.
Received FHLB funding, have not started the activities and grant. Can we still apply for additional money?
You can apply. You would want to make sure that you put in your application any previous awards and include maybe what your timeline is for using the previous funding, why it hasn't been used yet, what your plans are, so that we can, again, understand and wrap our head around. There's nothing that precludes you from applying for additional funding.
Okay, we have another question. If we had a nonprofit housing group serving multiple tribes, but not necessarily tribe-specific, would that entity be eligible?
Unfortunately, that entity is not eligible. Because of the structure of the program, it does need to go to a specific federally recognized tribe or tribally designated housing entity. A very good question, though.
I think that's it.
Okay. If you're like me and once you drive home tonight, you'll think of all the questions on your drive, or, as you're like laying there at 3 o'clock in the morning, that question will pop in your head. You have all of our contact information. We will send out the slide deck and provide you with this resource. And of course, we continue to be a resource for you as you work through the program or the process and determine if you're going to apply. I apologize for the technical difficulties that we experienced today that got us started a little bit late, so I kept you about 5 minutes over. My apologies for that. If you continue to have questions or need anything from us or just want to reach out and have a conversation, we are more than willing to do that. I thank you for attending today. Thank you for sharing your time with us. We appreciate it, and we look forward to talking with you soon.